You know, back in the 7th century, one leader built an empire that expanded with, well, breathtaking speed. But his most powerful tool wasn't his army, it was a book. Today, we're going to uncover the Quranic blueprint behind the legendary administrative system of Umar ibn al-Khattab.
So let's start with this huge question. How do you build a stable, just, and rapidly expanding empire, not just on military might, but on a clear set of moral and ethical principles? That's the exact challenge Umar was up against. So Umar steps into leadership of a state that is just exploding. It's growing at a rate nobody had ever seen before. And this isn't just about conquering new lands. It's about actually governing them justly, managing massive new resources, and bringing all these different peoples together.
So where did his solutions, these really innovative ideas, come from? He didn't have some pre-existing manual on how to run a state. His genius was in his direct, meticulous application of his foundational text, the Quran. That was his blueprint.
All right, let's look at our first case study to see this in action. It starts with something most leaders would celebrate, but Umar, he saw it as a profound moral test, the arrival of just immense wealth. After the successful conquest of Persia, a truly staggering amount of riches, we're talking gold, silver, precious goods, pours into the capital. For a young state, this was an unimaginable fortune. The treasury was literally overflowing.
But check out Umar's reaction. Instead of celebrating, he wept. When someone pointed out that it was a day for joy, Umar responded with this incredible warning. He was afraid that this very wealth could become the thing that tears them apart through conflict and corruption.
So to understand that reaction, you have to see how he immediately framed the problem. He turned directly to the Quran, reciting this verse. It's basically saying, look, it's human nature to love wealth and beautiful things, but it's also a warning that this love is a real test of your character.
And this is just brilliant. This is his personal application of that principle. He doesn't deny human nature. He acknowledges the joy in getting all this wealth, but immediately asks for the guidance to manage it properly and for protection from its dark side. You see? His first step was always to anchor the problem in a divine principle.
Okay, so this leads us straight to the next challenge. If all this wealth is a test, how do you pass it? Well, you create a system for fair and just distribution.
Now, the technical term for these resources was ghanaim, or war booty, and managing it needed a clear, transparent, and divinely sanctioned system to make sure that social justice always won out over simple greed.
And here's the thing, he didn't have to invent a system from scratch. He just had to implement the blueprint. This verse from the Quran explicitly lays it out. 1/5 of all that wealth has to be set aside for the most vulnerable people in society.
And Umar's application, it was all about faithful continuity. He didn't change a thing. He made absolutely sure that the shares for the poor, the needy, and for travelers were protected and distributed exactly as they had been under the Prophet Muhammad. This guaranteed that a social safety net was woven right into the fabric of the state's finances.
So, we've seen how he handled wealth coming in and how he distributed it, but what about the leader's own relationship with that wealth? This brings us to a huge principle, guarding the people's trust.
Umar's view on the public treasury is captured in this just incredibly powerful metaphor. He didn't see himself as the owner of the state's wealth. No way. He saw himself as the guardian of an orphan's property, a sacred trust that you have to protect with the absolute utmost care and integrity.
And where did this powerful idea come from? You guessed it, straight from the Quran. This verse, which is about the duty of a guardian towards an orphan's inheritance, became Umar's personal policy for public money. He was simply applying that very same principle on a massive, statewide scale.
And he absolutely lived by this rule. Just look at what he allowed himself from the treasury. It wasn't riches or palaces, it was the bare minimum. 2 sets of clothes, a single animal for travel, and the same basic food as any average person. He was a servant leader in the truest sense of the word.
So let's tie all of this together. What is the legacy of this kind of leadership? It's a crystal clear model of governing by the book.
We've seen 3 core principles in action. His approach to worldly wealth, that detachment, was framed by Quran 3:14. His system of just distribution, that was a direct application of Quran 8:41, and his profound sense of public integrity and trust was inspired by Quran 4:6.
So, the real takeaway is this. Umar's genius wasn't necessarily in inventing brand new systems out of thin air. It was in his unwavering commitment to finding the principle within his faith and then applying it with absolute precision and integrity to the real-world problems he was facing. And that really leaves us with a final question to think about. Umar's blueprint was clear and consistent. In our world, with all of its complex challenges, what is the blueprint for principled leadership today? Where do our leaders turn for their foundational ethics? That's something really worth pondering. Thanks for joining me on this.